Hi everyone, Stjepan here. I'm going to continue covering games from the Liberec Open. And if you've seen my last video, you can imagine how I felt before this game. So in round 3, I lost a much better winning position, like -4 for me against the 1600. And needless to say, I was pretty crushed. And I mean, if you've never played a tournament and if a tournament never went badly for you, that's pretty hard to imagine and it's hard to explain the feeling. But basically, you spend the entire evening after the game pondering about the game, thinking where you went wrong. Then you find the correct solution and then you want to smash your head through the wall. I couldn't sleep until like, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the morning. And the worst thing was rounds 4 and 5 were the only double round day at the tournament. So round 4 was played in the morning the next day. My opponent was 1800. I had the white pieces and I couldn't really prepare. There were only a couple of games of his online, which could have given me some information. Now, this game is important because it features a pattern I've faced 2 months ago in the Zadar Open, and it's basically the same pattern. The only difference is that my opponent in this game had a pawn on d5, and in the previous game there was a pawn on d6. I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. If you want to find the game, you can the previous game from Zadar, you can find it in the playlist. But okay, let's get into the game. So I haven't slept, I'm tired, and I would love to win quickly and get some rest and, you know, bounce back. And after a tough loss, when you win your first game after that, then you kind of feel better. Okay, my opponent went knight f6, I went knight f3 again for the reasons I've explained several times. I don't want to allow c5. G6, bishop to f4, bishop to g7, e3, castles, bishop e2. This is all extremely normal, c3. Now, the best move here is pawn to d6 and you play a normal King's Indian type setup. This is the toughest move to face because it supports e5 and because it supports the center, develops the bishop without major weaknesses. In this game though, my opponent went d5, which is also perfectly fine. It has been played about 30 times. Ding Liren played it, Yu Yangyi played it, and it's a normal position. It's a Grunfeld for black against the London system. Now, I for one enjoy playing against the Grunfeld when I play the London. The reason is simple. I get control over the e5 square and there isn't much black can do about it. And if black tries to gain control over e5 aggressively, then he can get in trouble. This game is a perfect example of that. Okay, I went knight b to d2, I want to develop first, knight to c6, and now pawn to h3. I don't want knight h5 to come with tempo, and then e5, which is a pattern that you're going to see in a few moves. I basically have to make sure that it doesn't work. Okay, and h3 is just to be able to retreat my bishop. I don't want to play bishop e5. I also don't want to play bishop to g5. I don't want to play bishop to g3, give up the bishop. Okay, rook e8, reinforcing e5, and I castled. Okay, now e5 of course has been prevented. My opponent should develop his pieces, maybe go for a hanging pawns structure with b6, and give me the possibility to maybe take away from the center if I can control e5 sufficiently. If not, then I don't take, because that allows e5, and he can play bishop to b7, and it's a normal game. But he went cd4, and I could take both ways. I could take either way. ed4 I think is stronger, and the reason is simple. I don't give up the b4 square, and I give my bishop the option to go to e3, which in conjunction with rook e1, knight f1, and queen to d2 can be kind of annoying. When you can imagine bishop h6 and knight g5 coming and maybe starting an attack. The f7 square is weak. If I can trade off the bishop, then there are weaknesses around his king. And here my opponent went for the pattern I've mentioned. He went for forcing e5, and unfortunately After my last game, when I faced this, again, the pawn was on d6, that was the only difference. I spent a lot of time trying to find games where that pattern actually worked for black. I couldn't, so I figured it doesn't work. Now, in the previous game, I reacted to it kind of badly, did manage to win the game, but didn't play too precisely, or I did, but from a human perspective, I complicated matters. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about. So my opponent played knight to h5. The idea is, once the bishop retreats, you are inviting white to win a pawn on h5 in exchange for a strong attack. So bishop to h2, e5, d5, knight e5, knight e5, bishop e5, bishop h5. This position is completely winning for white. This simply doesn't work, and my opponent played it fairly quickly. It may be unfortunate for him that I'd spent several hours looking at this pattern after it happened in my game, so I was very much prepared. I even looked at positions with the pawn on d5 with the same pattern. Now, the difference when the pawn is on d6 is firstly that this bishop is able to come to c6, and that's very important. Of course, now if you put the bishop on c6, it's useless. When the pawn is on d6, then the attack is stronger, as was the case in my previous game when I ended up playing f4 and rook f3 and rook g3. Okay, before we get into that, what should my opponent do instead? Well, he, for one, shouldn't play knight h5. I think cd is a mistake, because now I have a very, very pleasant Carlsbad structure where the minority attack basically isn't happening. He could get the f5 square for his bishop, or he has the f5 square for his bishop. So maybe bishop f5 is an option, and after knight h4, bishop to e4, trying to trade that way, but I don't think that's very good. cd is just a mistake. Knight h5 is a big mistake, and e5 is a blunder. Okay, so what happened in the game, which ended very quickly, was fairly simple. I actually have no variations to show you. So d5, knight e5, knight e5, bishop e5, bishop h5, gh5, queen h5. He threw in bishop h2 and queen d6. I went to h1, because in some positions, if the g file opens up, if he decides to sacrifice, then I want to be able to go rook g1. He went rook e5. I don't know what to say about this. There really is no attack. I went queen h4, and in fact, black is the one in trouble now. I'm threatening rook e1, winning on the spot. I'm also threatening to go rook e1 and queen to g6, to g3 to win the rook. I'm also threatening queen to g3 and knight to f3 to force a queen trade. And if I can trade queens, I'm winning, but basically I want to checkmate him. He played queen to g6, and hopefully you can find the winning move. It's not that hard to find, just knight to f3. If rook h5, then queen d8. If rook g5, knight g5. There are no moves, I'm just suggesting bad options. My opponent ended up playing rook e2, and I played rook a to e1, and the position is just over. Whatever he does, if he trades rooks, he's losing. If he doesn't trade rooks, I either win a rook or mate him. He ended up playing queen to d3, which leads to a very simple checkmate, or wins the queen. So queen g5. I want to be able to cut the king off. Of course, if king to f8, which was played in the game, then queen to h6. If king e8, then I take twice, then I take and win the queen. If king back to g8, then I take and again either win the queen or mate him. He resigned here. If takes, then rook e1. And if queen b5 trying to prevent mate, then simply rook e5. And there is no way to prevent the loss of the queen or checkmate. For example, queen c6, rook g5. That's it. And in this position, if king h8, then the same thing, just queen to f6, king to g8, takes, and here. And now rook b5, now queen b5 is even worse because rook e5, he doesn't even have queen c6. It's just going to be mate. Yeah, or excuse me, I win the queen because I think this is the best I have. Okay, regardless, it's just over. So try to remember this pattern. So far I've had it in 2 games, which is a surprising amount considering that I haven't had similar positions too often. But for some reason, King's Indian and, in this case, Grunfeld players think that this works. It just doesn't work. There is no attack. Even if the pawn is on d6 when it's much scarier, my research has proven me that it doesn't work. So yeah, remember this, and you can, without fear, just go bishop h2 and then take everything. And I mean, be careful. You could make a mistake, but a position like this is just game over. In the previous game, I should also mention my knight was still on b1, so my opponent had a couple of advantages. In this case, when my knight is just able to come to f3, there really is nothing for my opponent. So my round 4 game, after the devastating loss in round 3, finished in about an hour, maybe less, which was really nice. Usually my games take 3, 4, 5 hours, I don't know. So I had some rest. I was back in my room at like 10:30 in the morning, and I had some sleep until the afternoon round. Okay, thank you for watching. Hope you liked the video. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.